Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're untangling the absolute high-stakes chess match currently playing out between the United States and Iran. I mean, we're looking at a situation that has completely dominated global headlines, shaken up international markets, and essentially brought two powerful nations right to the very edge of full-scale war. So we are going to break down the exact components of this proposed peace deal that diplomats are frantically trying to piece together behind the scenes. With both of these nations teetering on the edge of a massive conflict, we're talking naval blockades and active military strikes here, we really have to ask, is a diplomatic off-ramp genuinely possible? Is this potential ceasefire we keep hearing about a real foundation for peace? Or is it just a temporary pause before things get worse? Because honestly, the stakes could not possibly be higher. 88 million. That is the number of people in Iran who are waking up to profound uncertainty every single day. And hey, it impacts you too. Global markets are absolutely terrified of a major economic shock that could hit your wallet hard if these critical energy supply lines get severed. So to make sense of all this chaos, here's our game plan for today. We'll start with Brink of War. Look at the two-phase deal, the battle for the strait, the nuclear dilemma, the domestic pressures, and finally ask if this fragile deal can actually survive. Section 1. Brink of War, How We Got Here. Because really, you can't understand today's headlines without looking at the diplomatic unraveling that's happened over the past decade. Let's rewind a bit. Back in 2015, you had the JCPOA that capped Iran's uranium enrichment at 3.67%, which is a level strictly for civilian power. But then in 2018, the U.S. under the Trump administration pulled out of that deal and brought back maximum pressure sanctions. Fast forward to today, and then in response, Iran has pushed its enrichment levels way up to 60%. This intense action-reaction cycle, that's exactly what drove us straight into today's crisis. Section 2. The two-phase deal, a fragile framework. Now, the absolutely crucial thing to understand here is the proposed Memorandum of Understanding designed to literally stop the shooting right now. Before we get any kind of final, comprehensive treaty, which, let's be real, could take months or even years to hammer out, international mediators from places like Pakistan and Qatar are pushing for a bare-bones MOU. The goal isn't to solve 50 years of geopolitical bad blood overnight. It's just a band-aid to freeze the combat. So, the rumored plan unfolding behind closed doors is basically a two-step process. Step 1 happens immediately. Unblock the waterways, lift the U.S. blockade on Iranian ports, and let international shipping get back to normal. Step 2 triggers a ticking clock, a 30 to 60-day window to sit down and tackle the vastly more complicated nuclear issue. Section 3. Battle for the Strait, the global choke point. This narrow little strip of water, the Strait of Hormuz, has essentially become the ultimate bargaining chip for the entire global economy. It is the main gateway for a massive chunk of the world's energy supply. And you can clearly see this stark contrast negotiators are desperately trying to bridge. The U.S. is taking a hard line, demanding a completely open, demined waterway with total freedom of navigation and absolutely zero tolls. On the flip side, Iranian state media and officials are insisting on retaining sovereign supervision, citing their territorial rights. They've even floated the idea of charging administrative or service fees for vessels passing through. And tied directly to reopening that strait is a jaw-dropping financial figure. In exchange for compliance and returning the waterway to normal, reports are indicating Iran is asking for the phased release of around $24 billion in frozen assets. For an Iranian economy that has been absolutely battered by heavy sanctions for years, this is a massive lifeline. Section 4. The Nuclear Dilemma, a race against time. Moving on to the second phase of this proposed deal, we hit the thorniest roadblock of the whole shebang, Iran's highly enriched uranium stockpile. This is the core issue, and it's by far the hardest one to solve. To put the danger into perspective, for everyday civilian nuclear power, you only need 3.67% enrichment, but to build a nuclear weapon, you need roughly 90%. Right now, Iran's stockpile is sitting at 60%. They have crossed a major technical threshold. Going from 60 to 90 is much faster than getting to 60 in the first place, meaning a sprint to weapons grade would be a matter of weeks, not years, if they chose to do it. Which brings us to what insiders are literally calling the 1,000-pound sticking point. Iran currently possesses over 400 kilograms, that's roughly 1,000 pounds, of this 60% enriched uranium. The U.S. is demanding that Iran either hand it all over to a third country or just completely destroy it, turn it into nuclear dust, as some officials have said. But for Iran, after facing military strikes, they view this stockpile as an absolute non-negotiable strategic deterrent. Neither side is willing to blink on this. Section 5. Domestic political pressures. The view from home. Now, you have to remember, neither of these negotiating teams is operating in a vacuum. Leaders in both Washington and Tehran are facing immense, intense pressure from highly vocal domestic critics back home. Over in the U.S., conservative lawmakers are heavily scrutinizing the administration's every move. You have figures like Senator Tom Tillis and Senator Ted Cruz already calling the rumored terms a disastrous mistake. They are explicitly warning that any deal that tries to bypass congressional review is doomed to fail, arguing that leaving any nuclear material in Iran is just totally unacceptable. So the geopolitical tightrope being walked here is intense. The domestic squeeze is identical, yet completely opposing. U.S. critics demand zero nuclear capacity and view any compromise at all as capitulation. Meanwhile, Iranian hardliners argue the exact opposite. They claim that giving up that enriched uranium leaves Iran completely defenseless to future attacks or regime change efforts. Finding a middle ground between zero and deterrence is, well, it's incredibly difficult. Section 6. Will the deal survive? The fragile future. With all these massive moving parts, what is the actual reality of this so-called imminent peace agreement? Are we truly on the verge of a breakthrough? Well, the gap between the proposed framework and the reality on the ground is pretty massive. Sure, there's a mutual desire to pause hostilities, but the ceasefire remains highly fragile. Reopening the Strait of Hormuz is bogged down by those fundamental disagreements over sovereign control. And the most dangerous issue, the nuclear program, is basically just being kicked down the road for 30 to 60 days, remaining in total deadlock. And to make matters even more complicated, the messaging from the top is shifting by the hour. Despite some earlier optimism, President Trump recently posted on social media that he's instructed his reps not to rush into a deal. He asserted that time is on our side and that the U.S. blockade will remain in full force until a certified agreement is signed. This makes the diplomatic timeline incredibly murky, which leaves the rest of us caught right in the middle. Every single passing day without a certified ironclad agreement pushes global gas prices higher, it strains the international supply chain, and it keeps the entire Middle East balancing on a knife's edge. Leaving us with the ultimate question to ponder as this historic moment unfolds. Is this memorandum of understanding actually a sustainable path to peace, or are negotiators just buying a 60-day delay before the next potentially devastating global crisis? Only time and some very delicate diplomacy will tell. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep your eyes on the headlines and stay curious.